good to see all of you, and welcome to the Women's Power Collaborative Lunch and Learn. We are super happy to have you here for our Parity in Portland briefing. I'm pretty sure I know all of you by now, but for those who don't know me, my name is Victoria Pelletier. I work in programs and partnerships that represent women. And it is really nice to see so many of you here. Thanks for being able to join us. I know we're like getting close to the holiday time. So it's like people start kind of fading out, which I love for all of us. So thank you for those of you who are able to join us for this session. We really look forward to it. Um, and what would be great while I'm doing my little opening speech is if all of you can introduce yourself in the chat. So just your name, where you're joining us from, the organization that you represent, anything additional that you would like to share. Please say hello to each other in the chat as needed and introduce yourself, and we can jump right in. So this is our last Lunch and Learn of the year, if you can believe it. This is our last Lunch and Learn of 2025. We have had so many incredible sessions this year. Once again, this is our second year of doing Lunch and Learns. And we've had a lot of incredible sessions. So whether you've hosted a session or whether you have attended one or both, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of the work that all of you do, all of your expertise. These wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you again. And I'm really excited for us to close out with a Represent Women briefing. I also owe you the Lunch and Learn recording from Emerge that happened last month. So as soon as that recording is ready, we will be sure to send it out along with this one. This is also being recorded. And before I turn it over to Courtney, just a reminder that today's session will be about 45 minutes or so. So we will do a little deep dive into our brief on Portland, Oregon, and then hopefully answer some questions. And again, if you're just getting here, introduce yourself in the chat, say hello. You're welcome to ask questions in there as well, and continue to share your feedback. And I think that that's about it. I'll put the link too for the report in the chat for those of you who would like a refresher, and we can jump right in. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Represent Women's Research Director, Courtney Lamendola. Please take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tori. My name is Courtney Lamendola. I am the research director. I've been with Represent Women now for around 7 years. Before I carry off, because I have a habit of just launching, how's my volume? Thumbs up. Can folks hear me? All good. Great. So let me get some slides set up for you. I am excited to talk through our latest Portland and our Parity in Portland report. And let me just get that all set up. All right. And just so I have access to meeting controls, I won't be doing the share screen. I am working off of a small laptop, not my desktop. So I apologize in advance for not being able to monitor the chat live. I can see Tori though, so please wave at me if there's something that needs my attention, and then I will figure my way on back over to the chat. Alrighty, so again, my name is Courtney, and this is our Parity in Portland report. This is the third iteration of research on twin track factors for women's representation. It is building on previous research that we have done looking at the role that systems level factors, so thinking public financing, voting system reform, and in this case, council expansion, and individual level factors, so looking at candidate level supports in various localities across the United States. The very first iteration of this research focused on wins in New York City and what led to those wins back in 2021. The next iteration in that research looked at the 100 largest cities in the US to try to see how many of those cities had the same factors in place. And then finally, we are now at this Parity in Portland report, which looks at, sorry for the gray box, every time a new person pops in, that might happen. So that now we are looking at Portland, Oregon. So before we dive into Portland, let's take a look at where we are at for women's representation in the United States. So overall, women remain underrepresented in the U.S. at all levels of government. According to the Center of American Women in Politics, women presently hold anywhere between just under a third and a little bit over a third in the case of the state legislature of all elected seats at the national, state, and local level of government. In our annual Gender Parity Index, which we last released last summer, we have generally found that progress for women in politics remains slow and uneven in the U.S., with half of all states making incremental strides while the remaining states lag behind. So, this reality fuels our drive to identify the barriers that limit opportunities for women to enter politics and advance the best practices for removing these barriers. Now, everything on the first half of the slide is looking at the national picture. What that sometimes tends to miss are the success stories that happen at the local level. So, the case of Portland, Oregon was particularly exciting for us, not just because it offers a success story within its own right in terms of achieving gender parity in 2024, but also because it offers some interesting implications for a blueprint for reform moving forward. Now, what happened in Portland, Oregon? In 2024, Portland elected a parity council for the first time. This is notable because prior to 2025, Portland was governed by a five-member commission made up of the mayor and four commissioners who were elected at large. Over the course of 100 years, the majority of commissioners were white men. This means that only 10 women ever served on the commission, and two were women of color, and in total, just five people of color had been elected. Following a successful reform effort between 2020 and 2022, and then the very first election post-reform in 2024, Portland had adopted and implemented a mayor-council form of government with 12 members elected proportionally with ranked choice voting to serve in three-member districts. And following that very first election in 2024, women now make up half of the council, and of these women, four are women of color. Another way of looking at the same information is some before and after images, both for women's representation on the right-hand side. We can look at what representation looked like by gender, both pre and post-reform, and then for gender and race and ethnicity, pre and post-reform on the left. Yet another way of looking at this information is to take a look at who ran and who won in the 2024 elections. So out of 98 candidates, 26 were women. And of those 26 women, six were women winners. And instead of just looking at who is currently in the council, what I want to draw your attention to is the fact that of the four districts that were created in the council, there's at least one woman who is currently represented in each of the four districts. So now let's take a look at where that leads us in terms of our research and how we understand what factors led to this outcome. So within our work, we have identified that we categorize barriers both at the individual level and the systems level, where at the individual level, women's political success is evaluated according to their ambition, their qualifications, their skills, and the resources that each woman either possesses or obtains. And the systems level, where gatekeeping practices by political parties and major donors, plurality voting rules, and institutional norms, low or no pay, shape opportunities for women to enter and remain in office. So what makes us excited is when we then take a look at how these factors can work together, because there are strategies that work to address barriers both at the individual level, think candidate training groups and pipeline organizations, and at the systems level, voting system reform, public matching funds. And when they work together, that makes up what we refer to as the twin track approach. Breaking that down one more time, on the candidate side, we are focusing on individual candidates. We are addressing concerns around candidate ambition, confidence, lacking networks and resources. And the goal is to build a pipeline of women seeking careers in politics. And the systems track on the other side that focuses on political processes and creating more opportunities for women to run and win by addressing policies and rules that disadvantage women candidates and elected officials. And the goal here on the system side is to remove pipeline blockages so more women can enter and remain in office. As I mentioned at the start of the call, the very first iteration of this research looked at the way that twin track factors operated in New York City, where on the system side, we had term limits that meant that 35 out of 51 seats on the New York City Council were open back in the 2021 elections. The city's public matching funds program, which amplified the impact of modest donations from residents, and ranked choice voting, which was implemented for special elections and primaries, which paired with the matching funds program fostered a more constituent-focused campaign environment. And then on the other side, we had a really robust candidate level ecosystem of support led by organizations that were dead set on ensuring that women maintained at least their current level of representation, but aimed for at least parity representation on the city council and really tried to take advantage of the unique opportunity that was offered by both fully enforced term limits, the increased matching funds rate, and the first time implementation of ranked choice voting back in 2021. The results are shown in the before and after, whereas before the 2021 elections, we had women holding 28% of the seats, and after the 2021 elections, women holding a majority at 61% of the seats. Not on this slide, since this is looking at that last election cycle that we worked on in that old research, but I am happy to report that after the last primary cycle this past June with ranked choice elections, and then the general election in November, women have maintained that majority since then. Now, back to Portland, Oregon, since that is the main topic for today, what systems level factors were also active here, and what did the candidate track look like? So similar to New York City, we have a public matching funds program that worked on a 9-to-1 matching rate. We have proportional ranked choice voting that reduced the election barriers. And we have council expansion, which paired with multi-member districts helped to create those opportunities for women to serve in each district and that novel opportunity that you saw in New York City thanks to the term limits. And then on the candidate track side, you didn't necessarily have organizations that were explicitly or exclusively focusing on getting more women elected. But what you did have was a really robust community-driven set of organizations that were working in hand with the city to ensure that all communities were engaged, both in the lead up to reform and in the election that had for now implemented these reforms, and that candidates were prepared to run. And this is what we explore further in the Parity in Portland report. Just to keep the parallel structure here, I also have the before and after. So we could take a look again at what representation looked like both before on the left under the city commission with one woman in office versus the right with the city council for districts and a minimum of one woman in each district on the right. And because I know I'm lightning through quite a bit of information here, we will make sure that we share these slides at the end of the presentation. So let's look a little bit more closely at these systems level factors in Portland, Oregon. So again, we have the public matching funds program. So public financing programs such as public matching funds, as we saw in Portland's small donor elections program, can help to lower barriers to entry and level the playing field for women and candidates of color. Why does this matter for women? Research by the Center of American Women in Politics and others has shown that women are less likely than men to have access to major donor networks. And as such, women are more likely to rely on small dollar contributions. In both theory and in practice, we have seen how this can be supportive to women candidates, because in theory, matching funds programs incentivize candidates to build deep community level outreach to raise funds and secure votes. And in practice, the Portland Election Commission found that there were more examples of candidates who focused on small donor contributions, winning over the candidates who were collecting the highest average donations. For more information on this, I've also been including at the bottom of several of these slides some of the direct links to my favorite sources as we worked on this research. Moving right on along to proportional ranked choice voting and council expansion, which I've decided to group together because they were introduced through the same charter reform efforts. We have the pillar of Portland's reform ecosystem, which is its new electoral system. So whereas in 2022, Portland passed a ballot measure that amended the city charter, and this replaced the former city commission government with its new expanded 12-member city council and implemented proportional ranked choice voting. For us at Represent Women who've done research on ranked choice voting, both in its single winner and multi-winner form, this was really exciting because we know through our research that ranked choice voting helps to level the playing field for women by eliminating split voting concerns and rewarding positive issue-focused campaigns. And we've seen examples both in Portland, Oregon and elsewhere where this also encourages candidates to, collaborate with their peers, to not tear one another down, to find the incentives in using this system to really focus on the issues at hand and to work with the voters. And the reason why I like to talk about this in the order that I do is because the ranked choice voting system, whether it's the proportional form we saw in Portland or the single winner form we saw in New York City, tends to pair really well with public matching funds that are also creating those incentives for candidates to be connecting with the voters on a very individualized basis. And then this brings us to the other side of the work, which is where the community-led individual level support factors come into play in Portland, Oregon. So here we have community organizations that were at the forefront of reform efforts in Portland. From the 2020 to 2022 charter revision process, community organizers were working to ensure that reform efforts were putting the people of Portland first and were deeply engaged with community members and especially communities of color at every step of the process, both from the charter revision to the efforts to get the ballot measure passed, and then in the lead up to the election, and now honestly, even in the post-election period. This work continued, as I just said, through those elections where community leaders were also working to ensure that there were candidates being recruited to run and who were really well supported in the context of this new system. And although these efforts were not explicitly or exclusively focused on running and elected more women to the council, women candidates benefited from the individual level supports that community level organizations provided. Now, if I had several hours to spare, what I would really recommend that everyone who's on this call sit down and do, if you haven't had a chance to do so already, is take a look at the More Equitable Democracy Portland Electoral Symposium. I added a link at the bottom of this slide. It is a recording of the Lift Every Voice symposium that took place earlier this year that our partners at MED hosted, which takes an even closer look at the role that community-led organizations were playing. And since I do recognize that we are coming in here as a national organization commenting on the case of Portland, I think it would be a great opportunity for folks to get to know who was on the ground in Portland and how their work tiered up to the outcome that we have today. And then finally, the efforts of these community organizations are reflected in who we have on the council. In addition to having a parity council with at least one woman in every single district, we have more geographic diversity on the council, more economic diversity, LGBT status, elected officials, and honestly, per reporting from partners in Portland, the most representative council that Portland has had to date. So where does this leave us looking ahead and what the implications are for our work? So we at Represent Women really focus on working with movement partners on advancing systems reform, especially voting system reform in the United States. And cases such as Portland remind us to consider the following. One, how ranked choice voting and proportional ranked choice voting interacts with other systems level reforms, such as public matching funds. Two, whether there is sufficient support for women candidates in jurisdictions that are adopting these reforms. Three, the role of community leaders and organizations in ensuring that community is fully engaged in reform efforts, both before and after the reform passes. And where this also leaves us is to just carefully consider how we can modify the previous framework that we have introduced. Because in our previous research, we identified the importance of having that robust women's pipeline organization infrastructure. And I still think that that's really crucial. But in the case of Portland, we were really forced to think through what is the role of community level organizations and what was missing from that study that we did on the 100 largest cities. So what I'm really looking forward to doing is taking a fresh look at some of that research to see what other organizations could be getting engaged on the candidate side work in addition to women's candidate organizations. That brings us to the end of the slides today. I'm happy to double back to anything that I raced my way through. And if not, if there's any questions that I can help answer, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, I think we can, we wanted this to kind of be like half presentation, half discussion. So I would love to hear from all of you, and it can be a question, it can be feedback, on the report. What are you seeing where you live? I know there are a couple of people here that are from Portland, Oregon as well, so would love to hear from them. Melanie, I was just gonna call on you because I saw you unmuted, so perfect timing. Please jump in.
A great report. I really enjoyed it and I look forward to getting it. The one thing I would say is when you said it was not explicitly focused on running and electing more women, the Charter Commission, which came up with these new systems, did explicitly focus on electing more women. In fact, we've spent a long time looking into that research. I'm just popping over for now because too many things are going on in my life and I can't remember anything. But we looked at how, for example, Maryland, New Hampshire, and West Virginia all used a combination of multi-winner and single-winner districts in their state legislatures, and women were consistently better represented in multi-winner districts over single-winner districts. We looked at the research that was put out by Cornell, American Academy of Arts and Sciences, Tufts University. It was very much top of mind when choosing multi-winner ranked choice voting, or as other people call it, proportional representation. But we decided when working with a community that is very nervous about change and scary words, it was just a lot easier to say multi-winner.
No, thank you for that. And I think that that's really good feedback, and it'll definitely impact the way that I present this in the future. I know that in the context of this research, where I meant to lean more on is or my point of curiosity is how many candidate level organizations are also active in Portland that are doing the pipeline level work? Because when we're talking about the systems, there is the system side work, and it certainly was the case that in deciding which system was being put forward in Portland, that the impact on representation was central to that process. What I have not seen as many examples of in Portland is, are there organizations that are specifically doing confidence boosting training with candidates that are specifically focused on getting women elected in the way that we had in New York City with 21 and 21, where their explicit focus was getting more women in office in New York City?
We did partner with a lot of organizations. Primarily, there's an umbrella organization, the Coalition of Communities of Color, who we partnered exclusively with, and with others, Fair Vote and so forth. The primary focus at that time was to get representation by people of color. As you may know, Portland, Oregon has a long history of being pretty white. And so the main focus there was on bringing diversity into our city council. But working with those groups, I can tell you that we looked at both aspects of diversity, gender diversity, as well as racial diversity at all times.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you both. I'm doing a quick scan. I'm doing a quick scan. Okay, I'm gonna bring this to a close. Because I know it's, well, depending on where you are, middle of the afternoon, evening. So I will bring us to the end of our presentation. And if you have the ability to use any emojis or use the chat, please put up something for Courtney for such a great presentation. A clapping emoji, a heart, a flower, whatever you see. We would really appreciate that. A huge shout out to Courtney and the research team at Represent Women for this incredible report. And thank you all for being here and for joining us. Thank you for engaging with us month after month as well. Like I said, this is our final Lunch and Learn of the season. We are in season 2 of the Lunch and Learns through the Women's Power Collaborative. So I very much appreciate all of you and your time and your expertise for being here month after month. And we are excited to go into 2026 with some additional Lunch and Learns to bring your way. We actually have a Lunch and Learn sign up sheet as well. So if you are looking to host a presentation in 2026, we would love to hear from you. We aren't going to be able to get to all of them, of course. So many always come in and we want to accommodate everyone and we can't. But if you have something that you would like to bring to the group as it pertains to women's representation and democracy reform, we would love to have you host a Lunch and Learn, and we would love to chat with you about that. So especially if you have not hosted one yet, and would like to, and would like to do one on behalf of your organization, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk a little bit more about that. And I will, like I said, share the recording of this session and the last session once they are available. And we will see you on the platform. We'll see you on the Women's Power Collaborative platform. Have a good holiday season. Drink water, take care of yourselves, get some rest. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Courtney, for presenting. And we'll see all of you again soon.